tonight. There are a handful of people in my life that I find inspiring in regards to relationships with their higher power. And this gentleman has helped me to learn what it is to have a contact with the higher power. And for that, I'm ever grateful. And he's got a powerful lead, no nonsense, straight up AA. That's the way I like it. Without any more from me, I'll give you John Heath. John.
My name's John. I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank Tommy for asking me to lead tonight, and thank you all for having me. This is actually a pretty special place for me to be able to come and lead. This was the church that my mom dragged me to all my life growing up when every couple of months she decided that it was time to go to church. And this was also the first AA meeting that I ever came to. So it's good to be here. Let's see, my sobriety date is January 3rd, 2004. So if I make it to this coming January, I'll have 4 years then. Tell you that it was a good number of years before that I was in meetings and coming to meetings and doing all that stuff, and just hadn't really, didn't do a whole lot. Didn't go with the solution. Wasn't willing. Didn't do all the things that I had to do to be able to stay sober. I think obviously grew up around here, so I've lived in Columbus pretty much my whole life. Growing up, I would say that, I would have said that my family was fairly normal, but, of course, that was the only family I ever knew. So until I really saw other families and kind of how they operated, that was normal. But I think that as time goes on, you realize that, well, A, my family was dysfunctional, but B, so is everybody else's to some extent. So I know that nothing was really abnormal to me at that time growing up. Tell you that I had the isms long before I ever put a drink or a drug in my body. Just those fear. I'd always run from everything, afraid of what everybody else thought, selfish to the core. I could go on and on. I think a lot of them I actually didn't believe about myself or didn't fully realize until I did my 4-step, here, and I got to see everything on paper. But it was there. I think periods of time with just deep depression, suicidal, all those things that go along with alcoholism I had long before I ever put a drink or drug in my body. Still growing up, I'd say that things were pretty good. Pretty good student, played sports, nothing too out of the ordinary, nothing too crazy, except for all those things inside of me, but externally, I was fine. I'll tell you that, the book talks about, it talks about a potential alcoholic quite a few different times, where it's, they say that we believe that at a certain point in our drinking career, if we would have stopped drinking at that point, that we would have never gone to that place where we had no control and no choice over alcoholism. That if we look back through our drinking careers, there was a place where we could have actually stopped. But that, they go on to say, it's kind of theoretical, because pretty much all of us who had that trait for alcoholism and who are alcoholic carried that on till they were, full-out alcoholics. Tell you that I think I had about a 6-month window where my drinking, and use drugs too, was controllable, where I had choice over what I did. And after that, it got worse, and it was in the uncontrollable range, and that's how it continued until I got sober. Tell you, the first time I took a drink, I was 14 years old, and probably similar story to, it was at a friend's house, spending the night, 3 or 4 of us. We all went around and stole whatever we could from our parents' basement. So we had, I think some tequila, and then some Arbor Mist, and fruity stuff like that, and just pretty much whatever. It was all brought together. The kid's house that we were at, he lived in a very big house, and they had a full bar in the basement, and his parents were 3 floors up or whatever else. So we also had access to some of that stuff as well. You couldn't really take a whole lot, because then it's noticeable, and that's not a good thing. But any way you put it, I remember that we drank, I got drunk, blacked out, don't really remember where I went to sleep. Remember that I woke up, but I remember that it was fun. We tried to, you know the strobe lights that keep on going, and like it's hard to do stuff in front of them anyways, right? Ball coming back and forth, throwing the ball at each other. We tried to do that after we were drunk with the strobe lights going back and forth, and it was really kind of disastrous, but it was still entertaining, and it was, whatever. Woke up the next morning, and it was kind of no consequences. Didn't get busted, didn't get anything else, and I can't say at that point that it was like immediately the switch was turned directly on, and that I was going, man, I'm going to drink every day for the rest of my life, and that's just the way that it's going to be. But there was definitely that thought in my head that like that was good, thumbs up, positive. Next time I get a chance to do that, I'm going to go for it, and that's kind of how it was for the next 6 months. It wasn't a dire necessity. I think, at a point it was maybe I was drinking every weekend. Maybe it was only once a month or two or whatever else, but it wasn't a daily thing. I definitely had control, and I definitely had choice. Most of the times when I did drink, I got pretty hammered, but, it wasn't something that I felt that I had to do. It wasn't something that I was, given into. I think that changed really when I was 15, and I started using other stuff as well. Stuff picked up, and from that point on, it was pretty much just a constant state of intoxication. If I was, it was either I was sober, well, not really sober, either I was dry from when the consequences started piling up, and school's getting involved, and parents are getting involved, and stuff's not looking real pretty, and I'd really try to clean myself up, and I mean, with every good intent that I'm going to, not put stuff in my body from this point forward. It would never last very long. A couple months maximum, and actually I think I was probably, as far as sanity level, a lot crazier during those times where I was white knuckling it, not putting stuff in my body than when I was. And I think the reason for that is that I think I hear people talk a lot of the time about just how horrible the use was and just how devastating it was and everything else. Well, I think it did a lot of good things, and that's why I did it. I was told by my sponsor that, what it says in the book, there's two things that treat alcoholism. There's two things that'll do that. Alcohol and God. I better have one or the other. That's how I live. That's how I maintain. That's how I keep going on. And it was, I think the first time in my life getting into that it was, I was a young kid, pretty invincible, can't get hit by anything, did a lot of stupid stuff, but it took away, it was a solution. It took away all those things that I had problems with my whole life. Caring so much about what other people thought, having to be, perfectionist and everything. The way that I didn't even really have to think. It acted as a solution toward everything that was going on inside of me. I think that was probably the first time in my life that I really felt okay on the inside with who I was in my own skin. Was when I was doing that. And to tell you the truth, I'm glad that it didn't happen that way. But if my drinking could have continued for the rest of my life, and if there were no consequences, and if nothing else happened, and if tolerance levels didn't increase, and it was just that same place, I don't think I ever would have stopped. I'm glad that it wasn't that way, but because of that, I get to get in a relationship with God, and I get to have that in my life, which I've come to find is much, much better than what that did. But with the alcohol, that would have been good enough that I could have been keep on going. It's just the problem is, I think, the consequences and everything starts piling up. I heard a guy say once, and I agree with that absolutely, that there comes to a certain point too where it's not that the alcohol stops working. It always works. It just doesn't take me out of me anymore. And that's kind of the place that I got pretty quickly, which is that can't imagine life drinking, can't imagine life without drinking. Tell you I got in trouble. The first ever consequences were when I was about 15, 16 years old, and the school got involved, and they had heard some things they didn't like too much, and my parents were involved with them, and so I was kind of, my guidance counselor that you schedule classes with came into a room one day, and she said, Jonathan, come with me. We're going to go down to the office or whatever else. So I've assumed that we were scheduling classes, for the next year or whatever. And she brings me into a room and she says, take a seat. And there's the principal and a police officer and both of my parents. And at that point in time, you realize this probably isn't going to be a good conversation. I don't know what gave it away. But, in short, they kind of, they put a contract in front of me, and they said, and I had already gotten in trouble once before, and I didn't, well, yeah. It's pretty much I was made to turn myself in, so I didn't really have any consequences from that. Just had to go to a couple of those family classes, whatever else. But this time on that, they put a contract in front of me, and it said that, either I had two options. I could either not sign the contract and not do what they wanted me to do, where as a result of that, the police would search me right there and arrest me for everything I had on me, and I'd be taken out of school, and I had some stuff on me. Or I could sign the contract, which they wouldn't search me. There would be no consequences for anything I had done up to that point, but that I would go to a treatment center, that I would let my parents test me whenever, or the school whenever they wanted, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that at that point in time, I'm a rational guy. I signed the contract, and had a few words with my parents afterwards. But that was my first experience of really any kind of consequences, and I think that, I'll tell you the truth, that pretty much anytime consequences started coming on, regardless of what angle they came from, there was a desire in me to some extent that it was kind of like, I'd like to have, things are getting worse. Grades are getting worse, life's getting worse, and it's kind of, that idea of not really having to do this stuff and being able to have somewhat of a successful life with, to go somewhere, it sounds good. To be able to play sports decently again, all of that, it sounded good. The problem was by that point in time, I had crossed over the point that they talked about, and I was just unable by my own will to do that, because I don't know how many times, time and time again, it was it's the same old story. Consequences start coming on, or something else happens. Yeah, okay, I'm going to get sober. Maybe go to some meetings, whatever else, try to white knuckle it. A few months later, end up as bad or as worse as I was before, telling myself that it's only going to be this one time, and that I'm only going to take this one drink, and then it's exactly where it was in less than a week. And just that continual cycle over and over and over again, with the only real difference being that things are getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Sometimes maybe a little better, but always in the long run worse. And I think that really all, centers back to, on page 21 of the big book, it says that 21 and 24, that, for reasons yet obscure, alcoholics have lost the power of choice in drink. That I don't really have a choice as to whether or not I'm going to pick up that first drink. And it says also that I don't have any control over how much I drink once I put that first one in my body. And that's what makes me an alcoholic, is that I can't control how much alcohol I'm putting in once I start doing it, and that I don't have a choice as to whether or not I do it in the first place. Which is kind of a death sentence, really, when you think about it, because, there's no real way around it. But every time it was kind of get a few days, get whatever, thought that I had things under control. All of a sudden, a lot of that desperation's gone. A lot of willingness to do much of anything's gone. And all of a sudden I'm starting to believe what everybody's what I want to hear. Which is, you're right, I'm too young to have a problem with this stuff. It's been long enough now that I can do it again. More about alcoholism, they talk about all the different ways that people try to control their drinking. As it's hitting on the first step in that chapter as well. My book's falling apart. And it says that here are some of the methods we have tried to control our drinking. Drinking beer only, limiting the number of drinks, never drinking alone, never drinking in the morning, drinking only at home, never having it in the house, never drinking during business hours, drinking only at parties, switching from scotch to brandy, drinking only natural wines, agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job, taking a trip, not taking a trip, swearing off forever, with or without a solemn oath, taking more physical exercise, reading inspirational books, going to health farms and sanitariums. We could increase the list. Accepting voluntary commitment to asylums, we could increase the list ad infinitum. And I don't know, that was just some of them. But I don't know how many different methods I tried to control my drinking. I was ready to do anything or take any direction that was not Alcoholics Anonymous. This was the one thing, that I wasn't willing to do. And it talks about on that same page that's the craziness that we have, is that constant thought or constant idea that somehow, some way, we're going to be able to drink like other people. And that's our first step, is that it says we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. That I had to concede, which is, to begrudgingly admit that I am an alcoholic. Doesn't have to be a happy thing, doesn't have to be whatever else, but when I think about, presidential race, John Kerry concedes to President Bush. He probably wasn't a real happy guy, but it was just simply facing the facts for what they actually were. And that's the same thing that, I eventually had to do in order to stay sober as my first step of recovery. And I think the key point in that, and it hits it on the 12 and 12, it talks about the first step, is that it says unless somebody's come to that point, unless they've had some kind of bottom, it's why this insistence on hitting bottom, they're not going to be willing to go through the program and work the steps unless they have. And it's not a matter of could somebody work the steps and whatever else before they've really had the crap kicked out of them? Absolutely. Just most people won't. Most people don't. And I think that it's hard to, in any case, really judge somebody's bottom or where somebody went or whatever else, because I've had good friends in AA that I've seen die, that I've seen go all kinds of places, and I don't know. To me, relative to a lot of people, I'm somewhat of a high bottom. I'm kind of going like, dude, what in the world is your problem? Like, you've spent 15 years of your life in the penitentiary. What is not giving you a hint that maybe you need to do something different? You've been more in prison than you have out of prison. Do you think that's a problem? You think that's an issue? You want to try something different? And they don't. And it shocks me, and I think eventually you realize that, and they say it all the time, that AA is not for those who want it. I mean, not for those who need it, it's for those who want it. It's for the people who are willing to go through the process. And I think that, for a few years after I was in AA and after I was in meetings, I didn't really have any significant time of sobriety. It was more of a consequences are piling up, I'm trying to get them rid of, but I still have all sorts of my ideas that I'm going to try to do to get sober. And I think eventually it just comes to a point where all those ideas failed enough times that I'm finally, granted that moment of clarity that kind of like, man, what I'm doing is not working. When I try to run my life, it ends up pretty badly. And I mean, from everything from switching the group of friends I hang out with, trying to go to church, lifting insanely, all the time, doing whatever. And I tried to do everything that I could possibly think of to control my drinking. Not drinking afternoon, tried that one. I'm only going to do stuff at lunchtime, because that's the problem when I get in trouble, is after lunchtime. And you could keep on going on and on with the stuff that I tried, and just it all failed. It all failed. And I think that finally, I've been sober for almost 4 years now, that was the big difference. Come back in was like, it all failed. Every good idea I had didn't work. It was the first time where I was really like, I suck at running my life. Point blank, I suck at running my life. Every time that I try to run something, it ends up a mess. So then maybe I can really, let God run it and be able to take the direction from my sponsor and to be able to follow through those things. I think that's where the good stuff starts happening. Up until that point, I can do whatever. Sure, I cried out to God a number of occasions, and it was usually more of the genie in the bottle type prayers. The fire's on, God, take the fire away. Do this, do that, whatever else. Not any submission to His will. It definitely wasn't, God, I just really want to do what you want for me in my life. No, it was the other kind. It was, I want this, I want that, please make that go away. Why do you have to be so much like that? Whatever else, And I think that in the third step, that's the huge difference between what so many people have done many, many times and what the third step actually, requires us to do, is that in the third step, made a decision to turn our will, what we want, and our lives, what we do, over to the care of God as we understood Him, is a lot different than simply inviting God into your life or having a conversation with Him once in a while. The first, it's really not a whole lot of a change at all, except for that there's kind of this new relationship that I'm saying that I'm going to invest in a little bit now. Me meeting a new person and hanging out with them is kind of the same thing. I want you in my life, let's talk once in a while, whatever else. Giving your life over is an entirely different story. That's an entirely different angle. But from what I've seen and what I believe, that's what I had to do to stay sober. And I think that's what the steps require of me. That's what AA requires of me. That I had to be able to give over everything to God, not just a little bit whatever else, And I think the only way that you get to that place is just complete desperation. When, the book says that we will long for the end, talking about our drinking, talking about suicide, death, obviously. And it's that place where I don't want to do anything close to what it's doing now. This is my choice. It's that desperation to God, And from what I know about God or what I've seen about God, He seems to like that quite a bit. That when you're just really ready and really desperate to be able to give yourself to Him, to be able to do that, there wasn't I think our God's a loving God, and there didn't seem to be too much concern about all the past sin or past wrong or whatever else, but it's just, look, I'm ready now to do with me what you will, And I think that a big mistake or something that gets overcomplicated so much of the times, and that I have a tendency to overcomplicate all over the place, is just kind of, well, what is it? Getting closer to God and all the stuff that goes along with it. And I think that the steps in Alcoholics Anonymous, that worked for me because it was the first logical solution, directions that it told me what you had to do. There's, for quite a long time, it would kind of I'd realize there's something to this God thing. You know what I mean? If I'm going to get sober, most places I go, I need God in my life. But, I have the tendency to think like a lot of people, theorize the crap out of everything, debate stuff for hours and hours and hours, and then never move a single finger toward any kind of action. That I'm going to talk about stuff forever. We're going to try to get all nice concepts written out. I'm going to have, just these big, massive books of John's intelligent thoughts by the end of the day. But we're not really going to do anything. We're not really going to do any action or really get God in our life, And it's, I think, that overcomplicating things, which made me so lost for so long that when I really did want to get sober, there was a long time where it was just that hopelessness of I don't know what to do. I'm getting told 10 different, well-intended opinions on what I should do with my life to stay sober, which all failed from all different angles. I think treatment center and rehab probably screwed me up more than anything else did, because they were going to really theorize about some stuff and have a ditto sheet for everything that happens. When I came to AA and when I got the solution out of the big book, it was just direct directions. It doesn't have to be this big complicated thing. Concede your innermost self that you're an alcoholic. Do you believe in God? Cool. You ready to turn your will and your life over to God? And then at that point, let's go. Let's do the fourth step. Let's get on with the rest of the stuff that's in there. I was told that how do you know whether somebody did a real third step or not? Do they do the rest of them? It's the AA waltz, 1, 2, 3 out, 1, 2, 3 out, 1, 2, 3 out. I don't think that people really did any of them. They're definitely not desperate. They're not even willing to do the steps that are suggested as a program of recovery. They said they turned their will and their life over to God, but they're not going on any farther in it. It's just words. It's what I did to my parents and everyone close to me my whole life, trying to convince you of something, trying to reason things out. Until action gets put in place, none of it means anything. And that's what the steps allowed me to do. The steps come to learn they didn't recreate anything. God's always been there. He's always loved me. His grace has always been fully extended to me. Just forever. It was that the book says that there were certain things in us that were blocking us from God. It wasn't that God's relationship with me had changed. It wasn't that God stopped loving me. It was that there was a block on the other end. God was able to get to me fine. I wasn't able to get to God. There were things that had been blocking me, and it talked about that selfishness and self-centeredness, which it says is the root of our troubles. It talked about all those things that I had inside of me that kept me from God. And the book says that that's really the whole purpose of the 12 steps, is to remove those things so that you're in a position with God where He can remove your alcohol problem. Wow, not real complicated, but it does take action. So when I was told to go ahead, did my third step and got onto my fourth step, and I had the list. I had the flaw list. I had the sex misconduct list. I had the resentment list. I had the fear list. I had the sexual ideal, prayer, and then the asking God to mold your sexual ideals along with that and all those things, and I'll be honest, if there's anybody going, I didn't know that was all in there, I didn't know that was all in there for my first 2 years of sobriety. I think that, when I came in, for the first couple of years, my view on AA and what it actually was really, really wrong. And I went to meetings every day. I did all kinds of stuff, but I still heard 1,000 different opinions from everybody. There's 1,000 different ways to work your 4-step. Don't go through the steps too quick, which is directly contradictory to what the book says, and all kinds of other stuff that I was still kind of lost, And I think I was kind of 2 years sober at that place that maybe some people are. It was just horrible, where I'm hanging onto my chair for dear life, wondering when I was going to get struck drunk. Because I've been sitting around long enough to notice that there's people coming and there's people going. And there's people going that I don't know why they're going. There's people staying that I don't know why they're staying. There wasn't really any rhyme or reason toward what I was seeing. That was changed dramatically when I first met my sponsor, who I've had for the past couple of years. When he came into a meeting, in short, it pissed me off really, really bad, because a lot of the stuff he said I disagreed with strongly. But it made me do something that I'd never really do before, which was actually study the big book. Because somebody's quoting the big book and they're saying stuff that's contradictory to what I've heard in meetings for 2 years, and contradictory to what I've been saying, and I brought some question marks in my head that I knew he was going to be back there. I'm going to find out what the truth is. I'm going to find out what the book does say, and come back ready to argue. I found out how wrong or misled or any whatever else that I had been, and I think it wasn't more than a couple weeks after that I asked him to sponsor me. And I think what I got from him was a lot more straight, direct, and out of the book than anything else I had ever gotten before. And it, not saying that means a lot or means everything, but he's got 24 years of sobriety. The 2 sponsors he had in his life died with, I think, one 37 and the other one 39 years of sobriety. None of them ever drank, again after they had gotten sober. And that said something to me that was kind of like, maybe they got something in the message that they're carrying that I can grab onto. Because that was something I wanted, and I think that's the test, is really what works to solve alcoholism. Does somebody have the solution or not? And the solution is in the book, and I think it's a shame that so many people don't have it. But it's easy. Everybody's white-knuckled it for a week or a month or whatever else. But to be able to live a life where it's sobriety and it's carrying the message, the kind of life that he still lives, was powerful to me and said something to me. I'll tell you that time around I had gone through the steps, or I thought, with other sponsors, and kind of a different version, used a lot of ditto sheets, all kinds of other stuff. But when I went through that with him, I think it was really probably about, maybe a month since I met him, before I was, from when I was, step 3, or we were at that point, to when I was working steps 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis. See, the thing was, it wasn't difficult. It was just a lot of stuff that I didn't want to do. And in the 4th step, it was just a lot of stuff I didn't want to do. I don't want to look at myself. I don't want to see those things. But I think it's absolutely necessary that I'm able to finally connect the dots between really what's going on in here, what's really in here. For a long time, I could have said, yeah, I'm not the best person in the world. Nobody got here licking lollipops. But I didn't believe, or didn't buy into, or didn't really see, those problems that were in me as an alcoholic. And the 4 steps great because it's those things that are common to everyone. It says resentment's the #1 offender. It kills more alcoholics than anything else. I had a lot of resentment. It says that fears, should be classed more along the lines with stealing, because they seem to cause more trouble. It's all those things that I'm finally looking at in me, and being able to look at for what they really are, and it's the 4th step allowed me to be able to look at me from an entirely different angle. The first list was the resentment list, and I could list resentments forever. The cause, why I was resentful at that person. Again, I've told a million different people why I was resentful at whoever a lot of times. The 3rd list was, the effects, my self-esteem, fear, personal relations, security, ambitions. That was a big one for me, because it was the first time that I realized that I was resentful toward people that affected me in a negative way. It wasn't because they were bad people. It wasn't because of anything else. It was because they affected me in a negative way. I think that was kind of revelational to me because, for a long time, I don't know, you see somebody who's resentful, and you go and you ask them, like, well, why are you resentful? What's the problem? They go, that person's a dickhead, or that person's whatever. And maybe they're right. But the truth is, I got a lot of friends that are dickheads that I was never resentful toward because they never affected me in a negative way. See, it was all about me. It was always all about me. It was always that selfishness. You hurt somebody else, I don't really care too much. You hurt me, now we got a problem. I was able to see that. I was also able to see that in that next column, where was I to blame, that I had set the ball rolling in most cases. That usually, at least 70-80% of the time, I had done that person more harm than they had done me. Or that in a lot of cases, it was just that overall, the fear, false evidence appearing real. I was resentful of stuff that didn't even really happen. Somebody looked at me some way that, well, really, they didn't look at me that way. It was just all in my head, or whatever. But, until I have tools to be able to work with those things and to be able to get those things, just a lot of insanity going on. It's just a whole lot of crazy. But once I can see those things, and I can see my selfishness, my self-centeredness for what it really was my whole life, maybe I have a chance. One of the biggest problems that I had is I was delusional. In the book, I hear denial in meetings a lot, which is interesting because the book never says denial once. Denial is just straight up lying. If somebody asked me, if I stole $5 from somebody and somebody asked me, did you steal that $5? And I say, no, I didn't, I'm lying. It's not delusional. The book talks about delusional a lot, which is that I actually believe that false reality. I took $5 from someone, somebody asked me, did you steal $5 from them? And I say, no, I didn't, and I actually believe that I didn't take the $5. And that's what I was. I came in here, I really didn't believe I had a problem with selfishness. Because I could list all these different ways and all these different things that I really tried to be helpful for people, that I really tried to do this or do that. And I was great at being the third step. It talks about, the actor trying to run the whole show. It talks about that's what we were. And if you think about that, we're not even the director trying to run the whole show. We're the actor. We're just in the play and we're trying to run the whole show. Says that when I wanted people to like me, I would do things that seemed nice, but really it was out of selfish ambition. If that didn't work, then I could be a prick. It didn't really matter, but it was always all about me. And until I was able to see the problem for what it actually was, I don't stand a chance. I can't fix a problem that I don't know is there. And for so long, and up until I came to AA, the problem was that I had all kinds of ideas about what the problem was. I don't know how many times I prayed that God would remove my compulsion to drink alcohol, that God would do this, that God would do that, and that was never the problem. How do I know that's not the problem? Well, we got one step that talks about alcohol, 11 steps about living life. I was effed up 7 days from Sunday. Alcohol is what worked for me as a solution. But I got to find out, not exactly why I'm effed up 7 days from Sunday, but what I can do to get God in there to change it. I think there's two types of people that you see all the time. The one type is they come in and they don't really want to do anything ever. And that's just the way it is. There's no effort to really do much of anything, and that's just how it is. And usually may stay around, may not, usually gone, usually always miserable. And then there's the type of person who comes in and they're like hot on fire for about a minute, and then they're gone and they're out the door. And I think that what I've learned from my sponsor and what I've learned about, I think, just life and God and whatever else in general is that it's a marathon race. That I need to have a pretty good pace for. Don't want to overkill myself. Don't want to walk it, or else I'm never going to get done. But that I want to keep on moving along and keep on moving in that direction. I got to take the hits as they come and keep on moving forward. And I think. Well, that was kind of a tangent, but from the fourth step and learning all those things and getting it down on paper, and then sharing that with my sponsor in the fifth step, able to see things finally for what they were in my life, the selfishness, the fear, everything else that had always ran me. From that point, it was less than an hour if you read the book that you're through 6 and 7. It's less than an hour after your fifth step. The 8th step's already made because it says that you made it when you took inventory, and then you're on the 9th step. And at that point, it was making the amends. It was and then doing the personal inventory on a daily basis, the prayer, meditation, and helping others, and the amends in my life that I had to make were probably the biggest area that might be the single most event where I felt like I improved my relationship with God than anything else. It was because it was the first time in my life that it was really, these are people that I've admitted that I've screwed over. They have every reason that when I go to them to justifiably kick me out of their house or tell me to go F off or call the cops or whatever else, they have every reason. There's nothing that I can do to try to manipulate or hide the truth, which I've done my whole life for everything. There's other areas where I could have asked God to help me out. If I got a big test coming up, God, pray that you just help me on that test, whatever else. But I can still study my butt off to affect the outcome. I can pray for a job, but I can still go look like crazy to affect the outcome. Going to make amends, there was nothing that I could do to possibly affect the outcome. It was the first time that it was really that blind faith where, look, I'm scared. I don't want to do this. But I know that, these are people that I've harmed. I want to make this right. God, show up and be there with me. And the important thing that I had to remember too is that it's not how the amends are taken. Whether the person throws me out or not has nothing to do with it. The amends were a lot more about the relationship between me and God than it was me and the other person. But when I'm finally willing to step out there to be able to do what I know is right, because it's all stuff that I've admitted and walked through that fear, my relationship with God just got a lot better, a lot quicker, and a lot more intimate. And it was because of the action that was involved in that. And I don't know how many times that I had wanted to. Well, that's my natural tendency is that if I want to get more spiritual, want to get more closer to God, I'm going to read another book, I'm going to go to another meeting, I'm going to meditate for 30 more minutes, I'm going to do this, do that, whatever else, none of which requires action or any type of fear that I'm walking through. The things that the AA has taught me, it says it's a spiritual program of action, that it's the things that bring me close to God, it's the grungy work that I don't want to do. Helping people out, the real service, physical service that I don't want to do. It's the doing what's right, making those amends, walking through that fear that I don't want to do. Those are the things that improve my relationship with God. I think a lot of the other stuff goes hand in hand with that, but it doesn't work one without the other. And my sponsor always says, pray for potatoes, but bring a hoe. And it's I can pray for God, whatever, and that's awesome. But I better be ready to carry out the action that's on the other part of that. I better be ready to carry out my end because He won't do it for me. How do I know that? Well, have you ever tried praying that God would clean your bedroom or your house or anything? Because I promise you, you can pray forever. It ain't going to happen. Your bedroom's going to be just as dirty 3 weeks from now as it was tonight. That you have to be able to put the action forth. And I think that's a gift from God. That's where God lets us play a part in everything that He's doing and everything that He's going with. But, through those amends and being able to do that, there was just some awesome things that happened nonetheless. My little brother, who's 10 years younger than me, who got to see really just about the worst of everything while he was at a very, very young age, like 5 to 9, 5 to 10, around there. That, and it's kind of sad that I had done. Everybody heard of living amends? I had made a few of those, when I had gotten sober, and it was basically I'd apologize to my parents or whatever else, and then treat them like crap, just like I always did. Apologize to my little brother and say, yeah, I know I screwed up, and then do the same thing that I always did. I need to be clear about, an apology is a verbal defense for actions taken. An amends is an attempt to repair the damage that's been done. And with my brother, I don't know how many times I'd apologize for just not being there, for not being a big brother, for not doing whatever else, for not doing what I was supposed to do as a big brother. And of course he's my little brother and still loves me, and it's always, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it, blah, 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 blah. But, still live like a mile away from him and didn't talk to him a whole lot. We didn't do a whole lot of stuff. We didn't have a whole lot going on. The second that I did the amends this time and I actually had that attempt to repair it, where it was now not just admitting where I was wrong, but going, Tony, look, I know that I've done, been a bad big brother in this, and this way. From this point forward, I want to hang out with you at least once a week, just doing something, me and you, just spending time together. I want to do this, I want to do that. Just about immediately, my phone started going off the hook. And that's been something that's been able to continue. That just a repaired relationship that I do not deserve, that God has given me that I do not deserve, that I should not have. And there's a lot more like it with family, with people around me, with the friends that I have today. My sponsor, just a lot of stuff that I do not deserve. It's remembering that's the important thing. It's remembering who's done the work. Who keeps me sober? Because I don't keep me sober. I never kept me sober. I failed to keep me sober. God kept me sober. And He does. I don't have victory in the successes in my life. God has the victory in the successes in my life. It's still the same rules apply. Everything that I try to take over and control and dominate end up absolutely disastrous. Even if they work out the way that I want them to, I end up miserable as a result of it. How bad does that suck? There's a lot of things that it's like I can kind of control, and I actually do it. I control it like I want it to. And then I end up miserable as a result of it. It's only the things that I put in God's hands, and when I'm really trying to get closer to Him and trying to do His will, that I have any kind of happiness at all. And I think that the happiness that I've gotten from that has been more than I could possibly imagine. Steps 10, 10 and 11, but step 10, the written inventory at night, page 86 of the book, lets me to continually evaluate all the stuff that we really evaluated in the fourth step. But where was I resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do I owe an apology? Have I kept something to myself which should be discussed with another person at once? And all those questions. That I'll be honest, for my first 2 years of sobriety, I did maybe 15 what I would call 10 steps, but it was really just listing down the things that I had done good and the things that I had done bad. It wasn't out of the book. It wasn't out of the text. When I have that I'm able to do on a nightly basis and to be able to get that stuff down there, it allows me to be able to clear up stuff as it comes up so that I don't have to go to that point where, when I came into my fourth step, there was just a huge garage full of crap that I had never dealt with, and it stunk really, really bad. And it was not fun to deal with, going from those steps. But now that's cleared away. If I keep on cleaning up the little bits and pieces that come in from night to night, and if I'm taking the corrective measures and I'm going through that action the next day, it never piles up. I don't ever have to deal with that just emotional feeling mess ever again. And it's continually building that relationship with God along the whole process, and in that same way, it's the 11th step with the prayer and meditation is that I think one of the things I love most about this program and about God in general and everything else is that it's not you don't reach a point where you're done. You aren't ever done. You reach a point where you're recovered, and the book uses recovered over and over and over again. I'm pretty sure that as long as I continue to do steps 10, 11, and 12 out of the book, I ain't taking a drink. It's been a long time since I thought about taking a drink. But that spiritual life, that getting a never-increasing understanding of God, being able to see more and more things that just blow your mind happen repeatedly, that never ends. And that's such a cool part because it's that you're walking and God's with you through the valleys, and you get to the top of the mountaintop, and the view's amazing and the feeling's amazing, whatever else, But knowing that there's mountaintops that are 10 times higher, 100 times higher, 200 times higher, that you're never going to be able to walk to them all. That's what makes life worth living. That's what makes life keep going. It's that continuing that conscious contact with God and being able to get a better understanding of who my Creator actually is, and to be able to see things happen. That's the fuel, And I think it's the part that's just never ending. I don't think anybody's ever too spiritually fit. Sometimes my sponsor seems to think he's going to levitate, but besides that, it's the ongoing thing. But and being able to, on top of that, then with the 12th step, be able to see the lights come on in other people's eyes and be able to see, what you've been given. And I think that sometimes I have a bad tendency, which is that it's maybe not too excited about stuff, maybe not so passionate, not just in AA, but whatever, I don't really want to do that, I don't really want to serve in that way or whatever else, and I forget that I was spared to be of maximal service to God and others. I forget what I actually did in my third step. I forget what life's about, and I think that in some way I've actually earned anything or actually done anything to get what I have, and I think that's the great lesson of life is that, I haven't done anything. I don't deserve what I have. If I'd gotten what I deserved, I'd be dead. Or locked up or whatever else. That God's given me far more than that, but being able to do any type of service or being able to help or anything else, that's not winning the merit badge. That's not getting one more plaque put up. That's not anything like that. It's starting to pay the debt that you can never repay. I can never do anything to repay somebody for what God and for what AA gave me. I can never do it. That's just my attempt of trying to show that, I understand that. I understand that. Which means that when there is somebody new that needs help, that is my responsibility to help them. I've got to be about that. I've got to be able to give on that, and there's nothing, still no place that I really think that I see God work enough or feel closer to God than when you see somebody else getting helped, recovering, and you see the lights going on in them, I think for a long time, for a couple years, even sober, that was the only time that I really felt at all close to God. I still prayed and I still meditated, but the only time that I was really kind of sure, God's here with me, is when somebody else is recovering, and you're seeing the lights go on in somebody else's eyes. But I think more and more it's just that presence of God during not those times gets a lot higher, and the presence of God during those times gets even higher and higher and higher. But I think today I've got a pretty cool life. Got friends that actually care about me. Got a family still. Got a little brother that I'm able to spend time with. Been a long time since I had to be worried about who was going to find out where I was, or worried about people coming to get me. I have a purpose today. I have a purpose today in life. It's amazing that I've never really dreamed could have been possible. And think that one of the biggest things that I'm grateful for, that looking forward to, whatever else, night to night as I go to bed, and then that prayer meditation is just like now is good, but I'm just waiting to see what God has planned for the future. I'm waiting to see what life's bringing. And the fact that just you can be excited about that and be going with that is awesome, because it's just that, I'm glad I don't know everything. I'm glad I don't know where I'm going to be in 10 years or 15 years or what I'm going to be doing or anything else. I'm glad that God is not revealed quite a bit, because that lets me go on for the ride. But excited for life. Hey guys, thanks for letting me share. I pass.
This is a no comment meeting. Thank you, John. If you would like to thank the speaker, please do so after the meeting. Would you help lead us in the Lord's Prayer?